Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I am D,
And I'm G.
and we are setting about 2.5 days till actual vote counting day, I think is what people are calling it now,
Right.
because there's so many people that have voted already. So we'll talk more at the end of this, but we've got a special guest today. But before we get started, G-Man, why don't you give us an update on the numbers who have voted so far?
Yeah. Well, so far, 92 million people have voted. That's setting us up for record numbers. They're talking about at least 150 million people are going to vote. And that'll be the first time in history we've had that many people vote. And a lot of those are first-time voters too. So it's really kind of a momentous election.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a shame that it took kind of a pandemic and a lot of the things to get more people involved. But hopefully, this starts a voting revolution that people will stay active, stay involved, and
Right.
realize that, and maybe hopefully also some election reforms put in place where it make it easier for people to vote. There's still a lot of cases in the courts right now that are particularly in Pennsylvania, where they've sued multiple times to try to stop vote counting and not, if a ballot's not hasn't arrived, even if it's been postmarked, kind of trying to change the laws after the fact. And I think everyone on every side can agree that I think they can anyway, that we should try our best to get every vote counted.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Colorado has a really good system. If you're a registered voter, your ballot comes in the mail. You have the choice of filling it out and dropping it in a drop box, or putting it in the mail, or ignoring it and going to the polling places on election day. So there's something for everybody the way it works. And actually, at least in Colorado, more Republicans return their mail-in ballots than Democrats, at least in the
Yeah,
past.
I think that's been the national average too. Is
Yeah.
that in most states that mail-in ballots have favored Republicans in the past. Now keep in mind, and we've seen those numbers too, where in Florida originally Democrats had a pretty large, registered Democrats had a pretty large advantage in early voting, but as we get closer to the election, it's starting to balance out. But
Right.
As a good friend of mine pointed out to me over the weekend, he said, remember that those are how people are registered. It doesn't mean how they vote, right? There's no guarantee that
Right.
Democrats aren't voting for Trump or that Republicans aren't voting for Biden.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it just means their party affiliation.
Right. Absolutely.
So we've seen that. We've seen New York Times had some polls out today that show Joe Biden with a comfortable national lead. But as we've talked about, 2016, the polling showed it was a lot tighter than the lead that Biden has, which is about 10 points in that poll. But we don't have a national election. We have 50 state elections. So numbers are tighter in a lot of the battleground states, so to speak. I saw some numbers in Iowa where numbers had started to shift towards Trump in Iowa. So in a Des Moines Register poll. So
Right.
we are, as we said before, we're going to have to wait and open our presents on election day.
Right. Or days after, depending
Right.
on how long the vote takes. So I think most Republicans are thinking that this is going to end up in the courts. That's why Trump wanted to fast track Amy Coney Barrett to the high court. We'll just have to see. I mean, there's a lot of things going on now with, particularly with the mail-in ballots. I think Trump would like to invalidate anything that came to a person without them requesting it. And they're basically saying that if you didn't request it, it's massive voter fraud. Although, we've been voting by mail here in Colorado for a decade or more, and we never request a ballot. It just comes in the mail. So we'll have to watch how things go here in the next few days. It's definitely going to be a bumpy ride, I think.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we bring on our guest now?
Sure. Her name's Dahlia, and I'll tell you a little bit about her as we're bringing her in. Dahlia there she is.
All right, I'm
Hello,
gonna do
Dahlia.
the little turn trick there.
There you
Hi.
go. So Dahlia was the Rocky Mountain News Society columnist from 1999 to 2007. She was one of the few, at least in her mind, Republicans in the newsroom. She's always been passionate about politics and actually was a registered Democrat for many years before becoming a Republican. In 2018, she ran for a Colorado State representative seat, but had to withdraw due to a medical issue. And that led her to realize that as an elected official, she would never be able to be as blunt and vocal about her political views as she can be as an everyday citizen. And this is a little added aside, nor could she use as many F-bombs when necessary.
Exactly.
She recently started her own YouTube channel called Did You Miss This?, which has a really unique concept, and I'm going to let her talk about that here in just a second. She's an unapologetic Donald Trump supporter. She voted for him in 2016 and 2020, and she's convinced that not only will he win the electoral college by a landslide, but he'll also win the popular vote, something he didn't do in 2016. So welcome, Dahlia.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah.
So I just started this really a couple of weeks ago, and it stemmed from a conversation that I had with a couple of my liberal friends that were here for dinner a while ago at my home. And we were talking about how we all get different news from different sources. And a lot of people feel like there's liberal media and conservative media. And when you look at the different headlines or you hear the different stories, we are actually getting different news. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of put some videos out there saying, did you miss this? Like, this is what I heard. Tell me what you heard. I've only put out a couple of videos so far. I was going to try to do more before the election, but at this point, I think everyone's minds are pretty much made up about who they're going to vote for.
Yep.
So I just figure it's something I'll continue down the road, and hopefully it'll get people talking a little bit more. And let's talk about it. Let's see what we are missing on the other side. What information are you getting that I'm not getting? And what am I hearing that you're not hearing? So that's where that came from.
Cool. Oh, that's a great concept.
Thanks.
Dee, did you have a question?
No, I didn't. I think I think the podcast sounds super interesting. So tell us about your support for President Trump. Do you have maybe a main issue that you like him on, or is there something that just an overview of your support you want to give us?
Sure. So my reasoning, and I do like explaining this because the people who don't support him and the people who really truly dislike him can't imagine how anybody could possibly support him. And I get that. And again, I think that has a lot to do with the way the media, portrays him. But my reasoning goes all the way back to when he announced he was running. And it's something interesting, Peter Thiel said this. Oh goodness, there goes my calendar. Sorry. I thought I shut off my notifications, so I apologize.
Okay, I've got dogs barking too. So
yeah, okay, there you go. So Peter Thiel said this a while back, Mr. PayPal billionaire. And he said, the problem is either people take Trump seriously, but not literally, or they take him literally, but not seriously. And I agree with that. I take him seriously, but not literally. And because, in my opinion, Trump is exactly who he is now, as he's been his entire public life. He has been in the public since the early 70s when he was, a huge developer. And I was familiar with him for a long time. My father's an architect, and I was very familiar with him as a developer. Not that my father ever worked for him, but, being in that industry, I knew who he was. And he's always been this bombastic, big mouth, braggart, larger than life personality. There's a reason he had his television show and he was able to fire people every day. That was just who he was. And I didn't expect him to change when he was elected. The whole thing, he's not presidential. Well, to me, it's about the policies. I don't care about his personality. I care about, is he doing things? Is he getting things done that I care about? Israel is something that's very important to me. My mother's Israeli. I'm Jewish. He's done a lot of amazing things for Israel. I think he's done great things for the economy. But obviously, we didn't know what he was going to do before we voted for him, right? I mean, the people who supported him. And I think what happened with Trump is people were fed up with the partisan stuff going on either side. And they were just looking for an alternative. And they thought, all right, I'm going to throw the dice and see what happens. And people who supported him were happy with what he accomplished. Not all of them. I'm sure there are people that were Trump supporters in 2016 that maybe don't support him now. But I also feel like there are people who didn't support him in 2016 who do support him now. So that's where I'm coming from. It never bothered me. His attitude never bothered me. It was more about the policies.
So as a woman, doesn't it bother you that he's like a serial womanizer and he's basically unapologetic about it?
Nope, not even in the slightest. And as a matter of fact, it's funny. I was sort of gathering my notes, ready to defend him to you guys. Back in 2016, when he was running, and if you don't mind, I'm going to pull this up on my computer because I was kind of laughing at this when I read it this morning. I sent a letter to Cory Gardner after the whole, can I say pussy on your show?
You just did.
Okay, so after the whole grab him by the pussy remark, which obviously, that was one of the first things that everyone kind of freaked out about when it came to President Trump and, the way he spoke about women. My argument about that was, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. And, over the last few years with the Me Too movement, we've seen that it's not Donald Trump or Republicans that think that way about women. I mean, look at Harvey Weinstein, look at all the Hollywood actors that got busted during the whole Me Too thing. So, men can be pigs. And basically that's what I feel. And I also feel women aren't these fragile little, butterflies that get offended by every single thing that men say. And so Cory Gardner came out and really said some very nasty things about Trump and basically said he wasn't going to support him. And I sent him a letter and I was like, look, I'm just going to, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read a little bit of this letter to you because this is how I felt in 2016. I actually sent this October 10th, 2016. And I said, do you think we're stupid? We know that Trump is not even close to the perfect Republican candidate, but the people chose him. Many of the same people elected you. When are you and the Republican elite going to accept that Trump is the nominee and that Hillary would be an absolute disaster for this country if she's elected in November? That's how I felt. And then when we get into the whole thing that he said about women, I said, I believe most people care more about Bill Clinton's despicable sexual behavior throughout his life, and particularly when he was in the Oval Office, than care about one comment that Trump made that was crass about women. And I said, as far as Trump's words and their degradation to women, I think the feigned indignation by liberals and hypocritical Republicans is laughable. As a woman, I'm insulted that you and other men think females are so fragile that we can't accept Trump's comments for what they were: male stupidity and immaturity, which most men possess in abundance. And then I went into a whole thing about there's a reason 50 Shades of Grey sold 125 million copies worldwide. Okay, women are not prude, they're not shy. We can handle it. And so that my whole thing was, I don't care if Trump says something stupid. Politicians say stupid stuff all the time. I care about what he's going to do for the country. That's it.
Right. So one thing you said that kind of caught my ear was you said it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. Trump has done it. He's been accused by over a dozen women of sexual impropriety. And you brought Bill Clinton into the mix. Well, his White House liaison was consensual between two adults. Now, was it smart? Probably not.
Wait. Are you talking about Monica Lewinsky?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's an adult.
Yeah, and his wife called her a whore. Do you have a problem with that?
I wouldn't have called her that, but
Okay,
you know, a
well,
jilted wife is probably 99.9% out of the time going to call the other woman a whore.
yeah, she called all of the accusers a whore.
Right.
So, you know, again,
Well, Donald Trump has said all of his accusers are wrong, that nothing happened, or, you know,
yeah,
if
but
it did, it was consensual.
okay, so the difference is Donald Trump has been accused, but nothing has ever been proven. Whereas we know that Bill Clinton got a blowjob in the Oval Office. So
Right.
if people don't have a problem with that, you know, again, it's the hypocrisy that I can't stand. And whatever Trump did, he didn't do when he was in the White House. So
Well,
I don't care about people's sexual life. I mean, you know, again, it goes back to I don't care about gay marriage. I don't care what people do in the privacy of their own homes. I care about policies. And frankly, I voted for Bill Clinton. That's back when I was a Democrat. So
right.
again, you know, I'll tell you this though, I was more mad about him lying about what happened in the Oval Office than what he did in the Oval Office. That's what I have a problem with. So if he would have come out and accepted the fact that he got caught, but to go through the impeachment and everything that we had to go through with him, that was unnecessary. All he had to do was tell the truth. That's what all these politicians have to do. Tell the truth.
Right.
So yes, to answer your question, no, I don't have a problem with accusations because accusations that aren't proven don't mean anything to me.
Gotcha.
Right. So let's refocus away from Bill Clinton and back to this election on Donald Trump.
Sure.
What do you feel like are going to be the key issues as far as Trump getting reelected? What do you think the biggest issue is for his reelection?
As far as issue or what his plans are for the next 4 years?
I would say issue, and then if you want to parlay that into a plan, you can.
Basically, I think it's going to be important to continue what's happening in the Middle East right now. I think there's some amazing things going on with Israel and some of its former adversaries and enemies. I think that shows a lot of potential for more peace in the Middle East. I think he's going to bring more and more troops home, which I think is something that a lot of progressives and liberals do care about. We don't want to be in unnecessary wars. We don't want to be going to other countries and telling them how to run their countries. I don't think that's our business. To a large extent, I think if we see things happening in countries that are holding down their people or any sort of genocide and everything, I think that's something that we need to be concerned about. But as far as staying out of wars and things like that, I'm very much for that. I'm hoping he does great things for the economy. The GDP numbers just came out yesterday, 33% GDP growth with everything happening with COVID. That's incredible. And you have to consider so many places are still locked down. I'm hoping, honestly, if Trump wins, that this whole talk about mask mandates and more lockdowns and everything is going to go away because it's hurting our country. I have a lot of friends here in Colorado in the restaurant business. They are going to lose their businesses and people are losing their jobs. And it's important to get things back up and running. The COVID numbers are going up, the death rates are going down. And anybody that wants to look up the numbers, all they have to do is go to the CDC website and they can see it. Or you can go to your
believe those numbers.
Well, okay. So let's talk about that. Do you remember when this all first started here in Denver, the numbers that were coming out, one of the coroners came out and basically was the whistleblower saying that the numbers that were coming out were false because people, like somebody would die in a motorcycle accident and part of the autopsy is to test them and they would come back with a positive COVID test and they would wind up one of the numbers. And at the time, our governor, Jared Polis, came out and he admitted it was 23% of the original numbers that came out were incorrect. People were said to have died from COVID, not with COVID. That became the whole difference, right? Did you die from COVID or with COVID? Well, Colorado changed the numbers. And if you go to the Colorado website, the state website, you can see those numbers. If you Google it And the first numbers that come up are from, I believe, Wikipedia or even the CDC. The numbers are still the old numbers. So when you talk about 220,000 people dying from COVID, I don't believe those numbers, not even a little bit. However, do I think it's terrible that people have died from this disease? Absolutely, absolutely. Do I think we didn't know what to do at the beginning? Did any country know what to do at the beginning? No. Were there any kind of medications or things that could help alleviate the symptoms and help people, get out of the hospital? People were dying from this because nobody knew how to handle it. We have a handle on it now. People are going into hospitals, but they're not staying as long as they were. They're leaving the hospital, and then they have the antibodies, and hopefully that will continue to happen. But to lock everybody up in their homes and try to save them from a virus, it's unrealistic, And the numbers that are coming out now, I'm questioning them because all of a sudden there's not a lot of flu numbers coming out. And we know that the flu every season gets a lot of people and kills a lot of people. So
About
when I see
20,000
these,
in the US.
exactly. So I'm questioning, what are these numbers that are coming out? Is it COVID? Is it the flu? There's all types of coronaviruses. So I'm skeptical, but at the same time, I'm anxious to get back to work. I'm anxious to support local businesses. I'm anxious to get people back on track, because if we keep going the way we're going, it's only going to get worse. And I don't see an end to it.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Next.
Dee, do you have anything?
What about, so I know you mentioned the pandemic kind of came up there at the end, and then I know you talked about foreign policy. It's hard sometimes to get the general populace interested in foreign policy as a national issue. So I feel like the biggest issues in this campaign have been the pandemic, and then also the economy and the recovery from it. We're seeing now, I know yesterday, Boris Johnson announced the UK is going to do a nationwide shutdown again. Europe is seeing spikes. I can tell you in Oklahoma, where I live, we're seeing spikes. We're seeing people. We no longer have any ICU beds in Oklahoma, and it's a real issue. I've got a real friend of mine a close friend of mine, that his wife is in a medically induced coma due to coronavirus, and so I feel like that healthcare in general has been a big topic, and wanted to know your thoughts on the ACA lawsuit, and then also on President Trump's healthcare plan.
Sure. So, okay, I have a dog in this fight. So, I'm coming at it from a position of, I was affected by the ACA tremendously. When that was passed, when I got my renewal for my health insurance, my premium was more than my mortgage. I am a single woman with pre-existing conditions. My premium was more than my mortgage. I posted it at the time on Facebook, the letter that I got, because I thought I was reading it wrong. So I had to give up my insurance. I had to give up my doctors, which I was told by President Obama I would not have to do. And by the way, in the debate, when Joe Biden said nobody lost their insurance, I almost threw something at the television, because that is absolutely not true. And it wasn't fact checked by the media, and that is infuriating. Did people benefit from it? Sure. Did a lot of people suffer because of it? Yes. Healthcare has been an issue in this country since the beginning of politics. And Trump has said on numerous occasions that he is going to deal with people with pre-existing conditions, that he knows that that is a situation that has to be dealt with. I don't know a lot of people in the country that don't have pre-existing conditions unless they're young and healthy. So I am not concerned about it in the sense that I don't know exactly what he's going to do, but I believe him when he says that he is going to include pre-existing conditions in whatever he does. I'm glad he got rid of the mandate. I don't think you should have to pay a penalty and be punished because you don't want to buy certain health insurance. I don't believe in single payer. I do not want the government controlling my medical care. I do not want to have to wait to get any kinds of services or surgeries or have to stand in line like people have to do in Canada and other places that have socialized medicine. So I have faith that they will try to come up with a plan that's going to benefit a lot of people. You know, nothing is perfect, and I hope that they just do the best that they can. As far as the pandemic, look, Trump has flat out said what he got in the hospital, he thinks everyone should have access to. He's talked about making it available for free on a large scale.
Right, who's going to pay for that?
We all
Mexico?
are.
Is Mexico
No.
going to pay for that like they did?
Who's paying for ACA right now? Who's paying for ACA? Who's subsidizing all the people on ACA? We are, the taxpayers. We
Right.
always pay for everything. Who's paying for you know, all the $1,200 that we got, which was lovely of the government to give us, but $1,200 over 7 months, really?
Right.
Is that paying your bills? Is that paying your rent? Is that paying your mortgage? No. I mean, our governor here just said he's going to give people who have been on unemployment since March $375. That's lovely. I am not knocking that. That's great to get something, but come on. What is that going to do really for people who are, I mean, they're getting to the point now. I know me personally, I've overextended my credit cards because I don't have the income coming in that I had.
So you'd be in favor of more benefits then? Is that what you're saying? You think
No, I'd be in favor. No, I'd be in favor of opening up the country, getting everybody back to work and getting things moving again. I lost clients. I was doing PR, freelance PR. My clients don't have businesses. I can't write public relations releases for businesses that don't exist anymore. You know, I mean, everything is a snowball effect and everything affects everything else. And we need to get the country open again. And if people are truly scared about getting ill and you know, going back out in public and this and that, then they have the right to stay home. They have the right to wear masks everywhere they go. They have the right to do whatever they feel comfortable doing to protect themselves. But the rest of society should not have to suffer for that.
Right. And I would just take a counter argument to that, that if we would have put a mask mandate in place in April of this year, our economy would be back stronger than ever now. And President Trump would probably have about a 60 to 70% approval rating too, and be sliding into reelection.
Well, here's how I feel about the masks, and I don't know if G knows this, but on my Facebook page, I posted this a while ago. When I bought my new masks, and I've got my little box here, I actually read everything on the box, and it just makes me laugh because there's 11 items under the warning label, and number 10 is the product has not been FDA cleared or approved. Okay. Number 11 is the product has been authorized by FDA under an EUA for the use by HCP as PPE to help prevent the spread of infection or illness in healthcare settings, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's a whole thing. But then when you read the disclaimer, it says, these masks are not intended for use in settings where significant exposure to liquid, bodily, or other hazardous fluids may be expected. They are not intended for use in the presence of high intensity heat. They are only supposed to be used once and then thrown out. Let's be honest, how many people do you know that don't use their mask more than once? And to me, I don't think there is any proof. There have been no definitive tests done that show that the masks are doing anything to stop the virus. There are places that have had mask mandates, other countries, and you just said that they're having upticks in cases. So how do you explain that?
Well, because they shifted away from social distancing. They reopened bars, they reopened restaurants, they reopened, they authorized larger groups to get together, and so you had crowd spread. I mean, the whole thing
Okay.
is a mask mandate with social distancing, and like I said,
Well,
G and I have talked about this. From a health perspective is one thing, but from a political perspective, I mean, it was an opportunity for Trump to reset, and he whiffed big time.
Well, that's how you see it. But, Gallup recently did a poll and it was very interesting. They surveyed Republicans and Democrats, asking them questions about COVID. And the numbers were incredibly different on each side on how the different political parties felt about it. And I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the news coverage and how the news is covering it. I feel, and again, I told you before we actually recorded, I was talking to you about my Feedly feed. I use aggregate media feeds to try to follow news from all sources. When you look at the headlines from liberal media outlets, it's doom and gloom. Everybody's going to get COVID. Everybody's going to die. Stay in your house. Give up your job. Don't have family over for the holidays. Don't do anything, that might induce spread. And then on the Republican side, it's like, look, wash your hands, wear your mask where you're required to, do the best you can to avoid spreading the virus and try to live your life, and let's get back to work. It's two completely different narratives. That said, I actually attended early September an event here in Denver. It was held at Bandimere Speedway, a huge outdoor venue, and it was a rally against the mask mandate. And I was there, and the media covered it as a super spreader, a COVID super spreader. And that was in all the media the next day. We're awful people. There was a couple Trump flags there. So we're awful Trump supporting, non-mask wearing, evil people spreading this horrible virus. Go ahead and look back at all the news coverage since that. There's nothing in the media about any sort of outbreak from that event. And I want to say they estimate 5,000 people were there. Now, there were people there wearing their masks, but people who didn't want to wear their masks didn't. And there was no big outbreak. And if you look at Trump rallies, there's a lot of people wearing masks at these Trump rallies, but there's a lot of people that aren't. That's called freedom. That's what America is.
I wouldn't say a lot. The clips I've seen, I wouldn't say a lot. I would say some are wearing.
Oh, no.
masks,
I'm happy to send you clips of people that are wearing masks for sure. But again, I have no problem with the people that aren't wearing them. I have zero problem with that. And again, you haven't heard anything about any sort of super spreader, outbreak coming from any of these. And believe me, if there were, the media would be covering that.
Actually, I'll disagree with you on that, because there's a study that came out from Stanford, and it was either yesterday or today. So if you haven't seen the story yet, but Stanford University researchers actually traced 30,000 cases of COVID and coronavirus outbreaks to Trump rallies.
Really?
Yeah.
What about the studies that said that all of the protests after George Floyd's death, there was no spread whatsoever? What about those studies? Explain that.
Where are those studies from?
There were two studies that were cited by the media. I can look it up for you.
You can send that to us offline if you want. We can tag it in the video.
So actually, the first video that I did for Did You Miss This was actually my prediction that Trump is going to win the electoral and the popular vote. And I included in that headlines from the Denver Post, and it was hilarious. One of the headlines, literally on a certain day, and again, I can look that up for you, said, study shows that there was no spread during the coronavirus outbreak when the protests began. And then the very next article listed underneath it is Trump rallies are spreading COVID, so, again, I have a problem with any study that says that there was no spread during protests, but there's tons of spread during rallies. It just makes no sense to me.
Well, this study was just about the rally, so I don't know if I don't know if they did research on the protest, but we can look that up.
Okay.
Okay, so G-Man, we're running short on time. Do you have questions? Then we can get Dahlia's election night predictions.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to ask real quick, what brings you to the conclusion that Trump is going to win not only the electoral college, but the popular vote? Because most pundits say in normal years the electoral college favors Republicans and the popular vote favors Democrats. So just wonder how you came to that conclusion.
Okay, so I will not say my opinion of pundits because I would use an F-bomb if I was going to do that. So I'll keep that to myself. But no, in all honesty and no joking, I have been tracking Ronna McDaniel's Twitter, and I don't know if you've taken a look at that. And I actually included some of that in my first video that I did for Did You Miss This? But they are taking surveys at the rallies of the people that are there. And I'm just going to read a couple examples to you. This one is from Pennsylvania. This was on, I don't have the date on this one. Some of them have the dates. This had 43,673 people sign up. Of those people, 23% from Reading, Pennsylvania did not vote in 2016. 24.1% did not vote from Butler, and 28.8% from Montoursville did not vote in 2016. These are people that did not vote.
Right.
Here's Rochester, Minnesota. 53.6% of the people that came to that rally were not Republican. Okay. In Green Bay, Wisconsin, 52.6 people at the rally were not Republican. Then you've got Waterford Township, 13,733 signups, 49% not Republican, 30% did not vote in 2016. And this goes on and on and on. And she's been tracking this since the rallies began. So my question to everybody that thinks that this is going to be some Biden blowout, I look at the numbers, and when they show Biden up by 12% or 17%, there was something that I included in my video that showed him up by 10% in Pennsylvania, and it was right before a news story that talked about the number of new Republican voters was 187,000 and new Democrat voters was 98,000. So the numbers just don't add up. And you look at the rallies, you look at the excitement about Trump. I don't know if you guys saw the last couple of days, it's been blowing up on social media, the big car rally that was in Arizona, that was 96 miles long of Trump supporters in their cars in a car parade. I don't buy it. I don't buy the polls. I think a lot of the news media, like I said, there's no way they're going to say that Trump is going to win because they feel like that's going to keep possible Democrats home, thinking, okay, well, it's going to be a blowout. And the other thing too, is you have to understand, just because people are keeping track of the number of Democrats that are voting, the number of Republicans, it doesn't mean that they're voting for their party.
Right. We talked about
you
that
and I,
in the intro.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that before we even got online, that people used to vote party line. Now people are voting for who they think is going to make their lives better and who's going to have the policies that make their lives better. I think the riots have had a lot of impact. I think a lot of Democrats are business owners. They don't want to see their businesses burned and looted. I don't think a lot of people like being called racist. There's a lot of factors involved here that I don't think the pollsters and political pundits, consider when they're doing the numbers. Not to mention, I don't know a Republican on the planet that would answer a pollster honestly. I really don't, because they don't think that they're taken seriously anyway. So, and frankly, the silent Trump voter, that's a thing because people don't want to lose their jobs. People don't want to get beat up. People don't want their MAGA hat ripped off of them. I mean, it's gotten to the point where you cannot say in America who you support politically because you're afraid of getting physically injured if you do so. So I think it's going to be a blowout. And again, I could be wrong. I'm not going to lie. California scares me. California could be the difference between the popular vote, right? But if he loses the popular vote because of California or New York, I can accept that as long as he wins the electoral vote. I'll be happy. I'll be happy to be wrong if he wins just the electoral vote. But I think he's going to win the popular vote too. And I think people are going to be stunned.
Well, like I said in the intro, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah. Is there a particular state that you're watching that'll be a bellwether for you on Tuesday night or into Wednesday?
Florida.
Florida. Okay.
I think if Florida comes back with the difference that I think it is going to come back with, I don't think it's nearly as close in Florida as everyone is saying. And if Florida comes in as a blowout, I think that's going to be the direction of the rest of the night. If Florida comes in close, then I'm going to watch other East Coast. Georgia's going to be a big one because everyone's predicting Georgia's going to go blue. So I think Florida and Georgia will be the determining factor of how the night's going to go, in my opinion.
Good. All right. Well, hey, appreciate you being on today and appreciate your perspective. And we always end this every day or every podcast for the last few months. We've reminded people to vote.
Absolutely.
Now it's pretty much past the time to do a mail-in. You can do certain states like Colorado. You wonderful folks out there, you can do a drop-off.
Which is great.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is great.
Yeah.
I never had a problem with the mail-in voting, by the way. As long as it's done properly, I think it just gives people more time and more opportunity to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but if you've missed the deadline for a mail-in or for a drop-off, make a plan Tuesday. Get out and vote. It's one of my jokes I always say, but I'm serious about it. This is not a spectator sport. Everybody needs to participate. We need everybody's vote to be counted, and everybody's voice to be heard. So appreciate it. G-Man, any last words? I think I said last thoughts last time, and it sounded like it was like a death sentence.
Right. I'd just like to say that, we're on pace to hit 150 million. I think that's going to be, if we hit that, that's about 65% of the eligible voters that are going to vote, which is great. But still, there's that 35% that, come on, guys, let's get out and cast your ballot. So
yeah, I agree. Get out and vote. It doesn't matter who you vote for. You need to know that your vote counts. Absolutely.
That's right.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you having me on. I really do. I realize we're not politically aligned, in what we believe, but this is great to just be able to talk about it and have the discussion. I think it's important, and hopefully maybe you guys will participate in one of my upcoming videos as well.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yep.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Everybody have a great day and be safe.